Hare Krishna. Thank you, Pawan Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Then with Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Start with Mangalacharan. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll continue with our Vandanam, which is prayers. Prayers to the Supreme Lord by the mercy of our Acharyas. So this one is Chaurashtakam that we have been reciting this whole week on the occasion of Janmashtami. Anybody would like to sing today? Okay, Meenakshi Moini would like to sing. So I'll share this here.
Hare Krishna. Raje prasiddham navneetachoram gopangananam chadukulechoram anekajanmarjita papachoram choragraganyam purusham namami Shri Radhikaya hridayasya choram navabudha shamala kanti choram Padashritanam cha samastachoram choragraganyam purusham namami akinchani kritva padashritam ya karoti bhikshum padigena hinam kenapyaho bhishana chora idrak drishtashrito vana jagatrayepi yadiva नामाभिहृद्यस्य शेषां गिरिप्रसारान् अपि पापराशीन् आश्चर्यरूपो ननु चोरयित्र दृष्टश्रुतो वा न माया कदापि धनं च मानं च तथेन्द्रियाणि प्रणश्च हृत्वा मम सर्वम् एव पलाशये कुत्र धृतोदयाक्षर त्वं भक्तिदाम्नासि माया निरुद्ध छिनन्सि घोरं यमपाशबन्धं भिनन्सि भीमं भवापाशबन्धं छिनन्सि सर्वस्य समस्तबन्धं नैवात्मनो भक्तकृतं तु बन्धम् मनमानसा तामसे राशिघोरे कारागृहे दुःखमाये निबद्ध लाभस्व हे चोराहरे चिराय स्वचौर्यदोषोचितम् एव दण्डम् कारागृहे वस सदा हृदये मदीये मद्भक्तिपाशदृढबन्धननिश्चलः सन् त्वं कृष्ण हे प्रलयकोटिसतान्तरेऽपि सर्वस्य चोराहृदयं नाहि मोचयामि हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, anybody would like to read the translation?
I can read, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Translation. I offer my respectful obeisances to that foremost of thieves, who is famous in Braja as the butter thief, and he who steals the gopis' clothes, and who, for those who take shelter of him, steals the sins which have accrued over many lifetimes. I offer my respectful obeisances to the foremost of thieves, who steals Srimati Radhika's heart, who steals the dark lustre of a fresh rain cloud, and who steals all the sins and sufferings of those who take shelter of his feet. He turns his surrendered devotees into paupers and wandering homeless beggars. Alas, such a fearsome thief has never been seen or heard of in all the three worlds. Mere utterance of his name purges one of a mountain of sins. Such an astonishingly wonderful thief I have never seen or heard of anywhere. O thief, having stolen my wealth, my honor, my senses, my life, and my everything, where can you run to? I have caught you with the rope of my devotion. You cut the terrible noose of Yamaraja. You sever the dreadful noose of material existence, and you slash everyone's material bondage, but you are unable to cut the knot fastened by your own loving devotees. O stealer of my everything, O thief, today I have imprisoned you in the miserable prison house of my heart, which is very fearful, due to the terrible darkness of my ignorance, and there, for a very long time, you will remain, receiving appropriate punishment for your crimes of thievery. O Krishna, thief of my everything, the nose of my devotion remaining forever tight, you will continue to reside in the prison house of my heart, because I will not release you for millions of eons. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Shushita Mataji. Wonderful. Okay, so as the day is coming closer and closer, may our devotion and our tight knot to the Lord also get tighter and tighter. And may He get closer and closer to our heart. He's already very close to her. He's the closest, like we've been discussing. It's just that we have not realized that. So hopefully this by His mercy and by His devotees' mercy, He will reveal Himself to us very soon as the day of Janmashtami comes nearer. Okay, let's continue with after the prayers. So we have done Shravanam, Kirtanam with japa and chanting and remembering the Lord, Vandanam, prayers and Vishnu Smaranam. Now let's read about Sant Bhagavad. Like we say, we have Granth Bhagavad and then Sant Bhagavad. So reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrit is like associating with the Sant Bhagavad. So let's continue chapter 32. Prabhupada is now back in India with the chapter Dancing White Elephants. Yesterday we saw he arrived in Calcutta, and then from there he went to Mayapur, and how everybody was super blissful and joyful to be in the serenity of the Dham of Mayapur, which is non-different from Vrindavan, as was explained. For Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Vrindavan and Mayapur are non-different, because wherever Krishna performed his Leelas, that is a Dham. And now Prabhupada is in Bombay, continuing or starting his first kind of Pandal programs, which would become historic as the time comes. And Prabhupada says Bombay is the gateway of India, even though there is not political presence as New Delhi or the political turmoil like Calcutta. Here things were much more stable. A lot of people are pious. But Prabhupada could see into the future, as he always does, and he says this place he predicted will be a very, very favorable place for Krishna consciousness. As we see today, we have such beautiful temples in Bombay and such nice preaching and wonderful devotees. So Prabhupada continued with his Pandal program, so let's continue from here. Anybody would like to read today? Although Prabhupada did not physically go. If not, I'll continue today. Okay, let me continue. Although Prabhupada did not physically go into the streets chanting with his disciples, He was with them by his instructions and by his presence before they went out in the morning and when they returned in the evening. They were chanting because he had told them to, and they knew that chanting was the natural activity of the soul. Everyone should chant. The devotees knew that at the end of life they would go back home, back to Godhead. And better than that, at the end of the day, they would go back to the Marine Drive to Prabhupada, who would smile and encourage them. Radio stations and newspapers took note of the Western devotees chanting in the city. One article appeared in the October 10 edition of the Times of India. A group of Americans, including women with babies in arms, belonging to the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, has been moving around Bombay during the past few days, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, to the accompaniment of cymbals, castanets, and drums, mridangams. Can the materialistic West, or at any rate a microscopic part of it, have turned at last to embrace the spiritualism of the East? I met several of the Kirtan chanting Americans who have come here to attend the 7th All India Conference at the Bharat Sadhu Samaj, which begins here today, and was at once struck by their sincerity and utter surrender to the cult they have adopted. The Vaishnavas of Mathura could not be so guileless, I thought, as this band of bhakti enthusiasts. The sand of Chowpatty beach was fine and clean. The audience numbered in the thousands. Sadhus sat on stage, Prabhupada and his followers among them. It was twilight. The sky above the Arabian Sea was cloudy and a pleasant breeze was stirring. There had already been 2 lectures expounding the Mayavad philosophy, and now it was time for Prabhupada to speak, the last scheduled speaker of the evening. The audience was eager to hear him. His accomplishments in the West had caused great curiosity, especially now that he had arrived in Bombay and his devotees were chanting daily in public. Prabhupada's disciples, bored and exasperated by the preceding 2 hours of Hindi oratory, could scarcely wait any longer for Prabhupada to speak. But Prabhupada, instead of addressing the audience, turned to his disciples and said, "Begin chanting." As soon as the devotees began the kirtan, little Saraswati stood and began to dance. Following her, the other devotees rose and began to dance. As the kirtana came alive with mridangas and kartals, the dancing and chanting of the devotees seemed to disturb some of the sadhus on stage, who rose one by one and left. The audience, however, responded enthusiastically, many of them standing and clapping. After 5 minutes of ecstatic kirtan, the devotees spontaneously jumped down onto the sand, and headed toward the audience. Thousands in the crowd rose to their feet and began to move along with the devotees in a dance, backward and forward. Indians began crying in uncontrolled happiness, overwhelmed by the genuine Krishna bhakti of these foreigners. Never before had such a thing happened. Policemen and press reporters joined in the chanting and dancing. Chowpatty beach was in an uproar of Hare Krishna Kirtan as Prabhupada and his disciples showed the potency of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. After about 10 minutes, the Kirtan ended, though a tumultuous unrest pervaded the talkative crowd. 15 minutes elapsed before all the people returned to their seats and the program could continue. The devotees had left the stage and had taken their seats on the ground level, leaving Prabhupada alone on stage. Prabhupada's voice echoed over the public address system. "Ladies and gentlemen, I was requested to speak in Hindi, but I am not very much accustomed to speak in Hindi. Therefore, the authorities in this meeting have allowed me to speak in English. I hope you will follow me because it is Bombay and most people will be speaking English. The problem is, as this evening's speaker, His Holiness Swami Akhandanandji spoke to you, how we can make everyone accustomed to take up good habits, sadachara. I think in this age, Kali Yuga, there are many faults." Prabhupada went on to explain the power of Lord Chaitanya's movement to clean the hearts of everyone. He referred to the 2 great rogues whom Lord Chaitanya had delivered, Jagai and Madhai. Now we are saving wholesale Jagais and Madhais. Therefore, if we want peace, if we want to be situated on the Sadachar platform, then we must spread the Harinam Mahamantra all over the world. And it has been practically proven. The American and European Vaishnavas who have come here, who have chanted Hare Krishna mantra, they were cow flesh eaters, they were drunkards, they were illicit sex mongers, they were all kind of gamblers. But having taken to this Krishna consciousness movement, they have given up everything abominable. Sadachara has come automatically. They are no more meat eaters, no more gamblers, they are no more illicit sex mongers, and they are no more intoxicators. They do not even take tea. They do not even take coffee. They do not even smoke, which I think is very rare to be found in India. But they have given up. Why? Because they have taken to this Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada ended his talk after about 5 minutes. I do not feel that I have to say very much. You can see what is the result of Krishna consciousness. It is not something artificial. It is there in everyone. I have not done anything magical, but this Krishna consciousness is present in all of us. We simply have to revive it. The audience responded with cheers and a great sound of applause. Prabhupada, with greater force and eloquence than the long-winded Mayavadis, had shown the essence of spiritual life, ecstatic chanting of the holy names, and he offered the living testimony of his American disciples. For the next week, Prabhupada and his disciples were the talk of Bombay, and they began receiving many invitations to speak and perform Kirtana throughout the city. The Times Weekly's coverage of the Sadhu Samaj spotlighted the memorable presence of Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. A group of 20 Americans, members of the Hare Krishna delegation, took over the dais. The air was filled with the beating of mridangas, the clash of cymbals, and the music of Mahamantra. Swaying from side to side, their tufts of hair tossing in the breeze, they chanted, Hare Krishna. One graying reporter, whom I had always regarded as a particularly unsentimental person, said to me in an emotion-choked voice, Do you realize what is happening? Very soon Hinduism is going to sweep the West. The Hare Krishna movement will compensate for all our loss at the hands of the padres through the centuries. About 25 newsmen came to a press conference on the 5th floor of Mr. Seksharia's residence. Prabhupada sat with his disciples on a large mattress and answered questions, and the devotees showed a film of the San Francisco Rath Yatra. The reporters asked about New Vrindavan. They questioned the devotees, why they had become sadhus, why had they left their country. The next day, the press was full of stories of Prabhupada and his movement. The Times of India picked up on a particular angle. US millionaire's son seeks solace in Krishna society. The article told of Giriraj's renouncing his father's wealth to join Prabhupada's movement. One newspaper quoted Giriraj, My father works hard and earns fabulous money. He also fights with my mother. My sisters ran away from the house. Thus, in spite of material comforts, nobody is happy. Quoting Shyamasundara, My father is very rich, but he has to take sleeping tablets every night. And there were other articles. Some soon letters appeared in the letters column of the Times of India. As far as my knowledge goes, these foreign Hindus of the Hare Krishna movement cannot be equal to the native original Brahmanas and Hindus. They will have to be relegated to the lower castes. It is significant to see one of the newly converted sadhus, Sri Gopal Das, formerly Charles Poland of Chicago, stated that he was a construction worker formerly. Doing Shudra's work, it would thus become necessary to allot the 3 lower castes to these foreign converts according to their profession. Another letter stated, The Hare Krishna movement is just a sporadic fad of sentimentalists. Prabhupada said these letters should be answered, and he personally outlined replies, delegating their writings to specific disciples. Within a few days, Prabhupada's replies appeared in the press. In India, even amongst the Brahmanas in different provinces, there is no social intercourse. So, if they are socially accepted or not doesn't matter. For example, amongst the qualified legal practitioners in different provinces, there may not be social intercourse. But that does not mean they are not qualified lawyers. This is a cultural movement, and if the whole world accepts this cult, even though Indian Brahmanas do not accept it, will do no harm at all. We are not striving for social or political unity, but if Krishna consciousness is accepted, there will automatically be political, social, and religious unity. The fact that one of our boys was a construction worker does not mean that he belongs to the Shudra community. The Shudra community is the less intelligent class or illiterate class who have no information of the value of life. In America, even the highest cultured and educated person can go to work as an ordinary construction worker because they accept the dignity of labor. So although a boy was working as a construction worker in America, he is not a Shudra. But even if he is accepted as a Shudra, Lord Krishna says that anyone who comes to him is eligible to be elevated to the highest position of going back to home, back to Godhead. In a letter signed by Giriraj, Prabhupada refuted the charge that his movement was a sporadic fad of sentimentalists. How can our movement be sporadic when this science was taught in the Gita 5,000 years ago and instructed to the sun god millions of years before that? How can it be called sporadic when our activity is Sanatan Dharma, the eternal occupation of the living entity? Would faddists give up all meat eating intoxicants, illicit sex, and gambling for over 5 years now? Would faddists give up friends, family, and money and get up at 4 a.m. daily, ready to go to any country in the world and preach in any conditions immediately on the request of their spiritual master? Prabhupada saw all news coverage of the Krishna consciousness movement as an aid to propagating Krishna consciousness. Even by criticizing the Krishna consciousness movement, he said the papers were broadcasting the holy name of Krishna, and Krishna's name was absolute. Mr. Seksharya held a special program for many important dignitaries of Bombay. Although he had expected no more than 200 persons, many more came. They were Bombay's elite, the women dressed in expensive silk saris and wearing gold and jewels, the men in silk Nehru-collared suits or white starched dhotis and kurtas. Prabhupada held Kirtana with his disciples, and then he spoke briefly and gravely. You are all very intelligent persons, he said. You are all very learned and educated. You are all very great persons. I beg you. I take the straw of the street between my teeth, and I beg you, just chant Hare Krishna. Please chant Hare Krishna. After his talk, Prabhupada left, and the devotees showed slides of the Hare Krishna movement's activities around the world. They also made their first public life membership appeal, and Mr. G.D. Somani, one of India's leading industrialists, as well as Mr. Seksharya, signed on as members. Although Prabhupada was happy to see the number of ISKCON's life members increasing, that his shipment of books from Dai Nippon had not yet arrived made him anxious. The devotees were promising life members books, but where were these books? Every day the problem became more and more pronounced. Prabhupada learned of a Calcutta port strike. His books had apparently arrived, but the ship, unable to unload cargo in Calcutta, had left port. He worried that the ship would unload the books in some other Indian port. The exact whereabouts and conditions of the books, however, remained unknown. Prabhupada was greatly concerned. He decided to send a competent disciple, Tamal Krishna, to Calcutta to try and retrieve the books. Meanwhile, he would continue preaching, depending on Krishna. Amritsar, October 21st, 1970. Accompanied by a group of disciples, 7 men and 2 women, Prabhupada began the 2-day train ride from Bombay to Amritsar. Years ago, Prabhupada had travelled as a preacher in India alone, riding the trains to Jhansi, Delhi, Kanpur, Calcutta, and Bombay to publish Back to Godhead and solicit support. After only 5 years in the West, he now had the great advantage of sincere disciples, and now the Indians were taking notice. He had stationed Achyutananda Swami, Jayapataka Swami, Hamsaduta, and others in Calcutta, Tamal Krishna, Shyam Sundar, and others in Bombay. His disciples would make life members and try to establish permanent ISKCON centers in 2 of India's major cities. His Krishna consciousness movement was beginning in India, and he wanted to travel with his disciples wherever there was an opportunity to preach. Just as he had worked in America, never settling comfortably in one place, but always traveling, speaking about Krishna, meeting new people, and offering them devotional service, so he would also work in India. The train arrived at Kurukshetra station. Near here, said Prabhupada, Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago. They say it does not exist, a mythological place. It is a symbol of the feel of the body and the senses, they say. It is an allegorical place. But here we are at the station. As he spoke, the sun was setting and a bright orange sky shone over the flat land. How can they say Kurukshetra is not a real place? He continued. Here it is before us, and it has been a historical place for a long, long time. When the train arrived at Amritsar station, members of the Vedanta Sammelan committee received Prabhupada and escorted him and his disciples to a park on the outskirts of the city. They showed him the large pandal the Niketan Ashram had erected for Vedanta Sammelan and assigned him and his disciples their quarters, 3 small rooms. Prabhupada took one room, the 2 women the second room, and 4 of the men crowded into the third, leaving 3 men to sleep outdoors on cots. The first night in the northern climate was cold. Available bedding was meager, and none of the devotees had brought warm clothing. At 4 the next morning, the devotees congregated in Srila Prabhupada's room for Mangala Arati and Kirtan before the deities of Radha and Krishna, the same deities who had been traveling with Prabhupada for the past 1.5 years. Despite the austere conditions, the devotees felt fortunate to have such intimate contact with Prabhupada and Radha Krishna. Prabhupada played mridanga, leading the chanting of prayers to the spiritual master. Afterward, he had the pujari distribute each devotee a bit of the fruit and sweetmeats that had been just offered to the deities. It was still before sunrise and the room was chilly. As the devotees sat huddled beneath a naked bulb, Prabhupada had them read aloud from Srimad Bhagavatam. That same morning, Prabhupada attended the Vedanta Sammelan. There were thousands of people in the audience, and since most of them did not understand English, Prabhupada spoke in Hindi. His presentation pleased everyone, and the committee members honored him by making him president of the Vedanta Sammelan. Although the program was scheduled only for several hours in the morning and evening, Prabhupada did not limit his preaching to these times. He preached every hour of the day. While he sat in his room, a constant stream of guests came to him, hundreds of pious Hindus seeking his blessings. Recognizing this vestige of Vedic culture, he pointed it out to his disciples. Just see, he said, how they treat a saintly person. Prabhupada also began receiving the usual flood of invitations to visit the homes of Hindu families. He accepted as many invitations as possible, more than possible, it seemed to his disciples. Prabhupada moved quickly. When the cars were ready, he would come out of his room and go, leaving behind anyone who wasn't ready. After each engagement, he would get into his car and go directly to the next. Latecomers would sometimes find he had already left. They would then jump into bicycle rickshaws and try to catch him. A wrong direction or a missed turn might make them miss the next engagement. And when at last they would catch up, they would find Prabhupada coolly gravy in the midst of a lecture on Bhagavad Gita or laughing and taking prasadam with his host. Every day brought at least a half dozen engagements. Come to our temple for darshana, come to our house for prasadam. And whenever Prabhupada would return to his ashram, he would find a long line of guests waiting to spend a few moments with him. None of the devotees could match Prabhupada's pace and enthusiasm. His energy seemed never to wane. For his disciples, being invited insistently to take a full meal at half a dozen homes in one day was too much, for they tended to overeat and some of them got sick. But Prabhupada knew how to handle the situation expertly. He would fully satisfy each host, speak about Krishna consciousness, hold kirtana, take a little prasadam, and move on. One evening, in response to an invitation, Prabhupada visited the house of Baladev Indra Singh, a descendant of one of ancient Punjab's ruling families. Although nearing 60, Mr. Singh was still a robust Punjabi Kshatriya, a handsome, tall, and sporting a big black moustache. He showed Prabhupada and his disciples through his elegant home with its large portraits of ancestors, uniformed Kshatriyas with their helmets and swords. In the trophy room, which had many animal skins and stuffed heads mounted on the wall, Mr. Singh brought Prabhupada and his disciples before his prize trophy, a large tiger's head. Prabhupada approached closely. You have killed this? He asked. Yes, Mr. Singh replied, and he described the details of the hunt. The man-eater had killed many people in a nearby village, Mr. Singh explained. So I went ahead and shot it. Prabhupada's eyes widened, and he turned to his disciples. Oh, very nice. Later, Prabhupada sat in a chair, and Mr. Singh sat before him on the floor. He said something was troubling him. An astrologer had told him that in a previous lifetime, thousands of years ago, he had fought in the battle of Kurukshetra, but on the side against Krishna. That's not possible, Prabhupada said. Everyone present at the battle of Kurukshetra was liberated. If you had actually been at the battle of Kurukshetra, you would not still be within this material world. Mr. King wasn't certain whether to feel relieved or disappointed, but Prabhupada assured him, that's all right, don't worry. Now you are a devotee of Krishna. When Prabhupada asked Mr. Singh to become a life member of ISKCON, he agreed immediately. He confessed that when he had first invited Prabhupada and his disciples, he had actually been skeptical. But after being with Srila Prabhupada for a few minutes, he said, all his doubts and suspicions had vanished. He would be happy to become ISKCON's first life member in Amritsar. Hari Bol Jai. Okay, we'll pause here. Yes, wonderful. Yeah, Prabhupada is going at the pace, at a pace that matters. So here, when I work in Kroger, they say, there's a famous saying that we have to work at a pace that matters. So here we see Prabhupada. He's with so much of enthusiasm, energy, which is far beyond this material world, right? His young 20-year-old disciples are having a hard time to catch up with him. He's like going at the speed of light, just like when you have lightning, the lightning comes first, right? And then the sound comes later. So Prabhupada is just, and we see again, we have not seen, at least I don't think anybody on this call has seen, except Lalita Prasad Prabhu. He is not here, but he has met Prabhupada in person, but none of us have seen Prabhupada in person. But we have seen Prabhupada's disciples in person. And yeah, I can relate to many of the Maharajas we see even today. They're in 70s and almost 80s. And the energy that they have, like when His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj was here, he's almost on the verge of being 80. And the energy he has is just incomparable to what we have in our half of his age. And even many other disciples of Srila Prabhupada is just yeah, especially when we see like this, the programs that they would go as sannyasis, like Prabhupada says, the business of sannyasis to travel and preach, and they have taken it to their hearts, and we see so many of them traveling all around the world for the sake of fulfilling the instructions of their spiritual master, being so true and so sincere to his instructions. Ultimately, it all boils down to that. That is what we need to do, to be true to the instructions of our acharyas. And yeah, we see exactly, as I was reading, yeah, I could just relate to all these sannyasis. And especially when we go, like when my Guru Maharaj was around, I went and met him in Detroit or um, Baltimore, wherever he used to come. It would be like that, exactly like that. No time to waste. They say avyartha kalatvam. There is not even a moment to waste. Completely absorbed in devotional service from morning at 4 a.m. like we see Prabhupada. Even there's no jet lag. There is nothing, right? Yeah, devotees are getting sick and tired or diseased a little bit as they are having a cultural shock in India, but life in Krishna consciousness goes on, and ultimately they are fully dependent on Krishna and on their spiritual master, following his each and every step, as they say, right? Every step in spiritual world, every step is a dance, every word is a song, every day is a celebration. So they're just continuing to follow Prabhupada step by step, action by action, just as he's doing. They are following him, watching him, and you learn so much by, like we say, you don't learn much by reading or by hearing as much as you learn by following somebody step by step. And of course they had lived there with Prabhupada, so watching him, watching his demeanors, his activities, they learned so much. But again, that is physical, that is the Vapu association, and then the Acharya themselves say that Vani association is actually even more potent. So even though we may not have that faith right now, but if we sincerely follow that instruction that yes, Vani association is even more potent than Vapu, then their instructions are there. Just like when we are reading this, all these things are coming to life in front of our eyes, right? And we can visualize everything happening in front of our eyes. The other day I was listening to this commentary or interview of the writer of this famous movie, Mahavatar Narsimha, on Hare Krishna TV. And he was saying, as a child, while growing up, he was asked by the other devotee who was interviewing him. He said, "So how did you get in?" Like, because we're reading of Bombay, that reminded me. Prabhupada said this is a city of movies. So this particular writer, he grew up a devotee writer. He grew up in Bombay, and he was saying that he had a very tough childhood. Like his parents were really sick, and they passed away at a young age, and he had to go through a lot. Despite that, his faith, like we are saying here, his faith, he said that small strand of faith was always there. It was never disconnected. And that was probably due to some pious activities he had done in his previous life, because otherwise it's very easy to forget the Lord, say, why me, right? All his other friends were very happy, but he was seeing the sufferings of his mother. His mother passed away first after suffering for 4-5 years. Then his father had similar medical issues, and for 4-5 years of suffering, he passed away. So he eventually was brought up by his grandparents in his Nanihal. And he was saying, and he was asked how did he get into movies. So he was saying that as a child growing up at his Nanihal, at his grandparents' place, his mama and nana, they were very very big readers. So he just got fascinated by books, and just reading the books, he says, that was his first foray. He says, when I was reading these books, things just started coming to life in front of my eyes. So to be honest, he said, I had no experience or no exposure to movies, but it was these books that actually brought everything to life for me. And as I was reading, I would start picturizing, so I would start visualizing, and then as I grew up, like he grew up a little more, then he said, now I would visualize, I'm a director, and how I will direct this shot, and so that is kind of, it just reminded me, that is the potency of reading, like the Shravanam and Kirtanam that we are doing. Reading is Kirtanam, and when it goes into our ears, those instructions are Shravanam, and it is very, very powerful. So again, everything is practical, very, very like practical case studies we can see around us. And so we see how beautifully he he has directed, or he has written the dialogues of this nice endeavor to preach the glories of Mahavatar Narasimha and one of the ardent devotees, Srila Prahlad Maharaj. So the movie is earning rave reviews and it's propagating Krishna consciousness. It's so nice to see so many people are getting inspired. Hopefully it is a dawn of a new era of how the preaching will continue. Just like people are starting to travel to other planets. Glories of the Lord have to be propagated everywhere in any form and fashion. So Prabhupada, just like he was doing here, going to these sadhu samaj pandals, not missing any opportunity to preach. So similarly, these wonderful endeavors, as they are going on, hopefully they'll be blessed by Srila Prabhupada. Okay, anything else from anybody?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, yes, Mataji.
Two takeaways. One was the funny line what you were reading, which says that the Hare Krishna movement is to save the Jagais and Nitais of Kali Yuga in wholesale. So that made me chuckle a little. And another takeaway was, like, despite the criticism that Prabhupada was receiving from people when he was trying to preach in Mumbai, he took that as an opportunity, and instead of staying quiet, he chose to answer to the people's critics and used it as an opportunity to spread Lord's name more. So that was a major takeaway from me from today's reading. Just wanted to share.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, when we were reading a few months ago, when Prabhupada in America, he said something similar when they were getting negative publicity in American papers. Also, sometimes he says, as long as it is there printed the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, he said that is enough. As long as they have printed the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and people are reading Hare Krishna Mahamantra, that will be sufficient. So yeah, that is the potency of that holy name. Thank you, Mataji, for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you again for all of your association. I will end here with Vaishnava Pranam prayers. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrind ki jai, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.